The history of ancient Egypt, prehistoric period. This history of Egypt starts in Pottery Neolithic around 5,000 years before Common Era. According to the modern knowledge of historians, at the end of Middle Paleolithic, people started spreading from Africa to the world. Back then, Egypt was a mix of jungles and swamps, a very unpleasant place for a settlement. But some still lived there. In the Bronze Age, people began to return back to Africa. We talked about that in video 1 and 2. Some groups of people settled in the land, but that will later become Egypt. Steadily they mixed with aboriginals. Chronological period of ancient Egypt. Prehistorical period, Zero Dynasty. Early Dynastic period, Old Kingdom. First Intermediate period, Middle Kingdom. Second Intermediate period, New Kingdom. Third Intermediate period, Late period, Persian domination, Ptolemaic dynasty.
Prehistorical period, Zero Dynasty, Earlier Bronze Age. The term Zero Dynasty is not accepted by all archaeologists. However, I consider this term useful and will use it. Despite the name, the Zero Dynasty describes the chronological relations between governors in prehistorical period of Egypt, not the chain of inheritance. The pharaohs of this dynasty ruled in proto-states of Upper and Lower Egypt, and at the end they united both kingdoms of Egypt. Upper Egypt appeared earlier as the result of internecine wars between different tribes. Upper Egypt was always stronger than Lower Egypt. This superiority remained through the whole ancient Egypt and was reflected in myths and in law. Unfortunately, we didn't know much about Zero Dynasty as there are not enough archaeological evidence of that period. But we know that in the Zero Dynasty time, the irrigation system already worked, and some scientists believe that Egypt wasn't united by wars, but by economy. The irrigation system needed good maintenance, so it wouldn't exist under worse conditions. Therefore, Egypt wasn't and wouldn't be united by wars only.
Many cultural aspects of the classical ancient Egypt emerged in the period of Zero Dynasty. The tradition to place the heraldic symbol Ser near the pharaoh's name, the united crown of the Upper and Lower Egypt, the Horus was started to be represented as a hawk in writing. The Egyptians had their own writing and irrigation. The first natural mummification. The corpses, usually naked, was put into a grave in fetal position. Then the grave was filled with sand. The rest was done by the climate. In the following kingdoms, this method was used by not noble citizens. The dynastic period. Early Kingdom, First, Second Dynasties. The period of the Early Kingdom was in the last quarter of Earlier Bronze Age until the first quarter of Middle Bronze Age. If you can't match the dates, don't worry, the historians can't match them either. Moreover, there's a whole unit of Egyptology focusing on reconstruction of the timelines in ancient Egypt. The data about the Early Kingdom is mostly based on the dug out artifacts. The data about the first dynasties is also fragmentary, but at least the term dynasty appeared. The dynasty begins along with its founder, and lasts until the power falls into the hands of indirect heir. Usually, those were other close family members, e.g., brothers, sisters, nephews, etc.
In the early kingdom the first chronicles appeared, though they were not precise and reliable, but the important thing is that chronicles had years, months, and days. That shows us that the Egyptians were really good at astronomy. As the evidence of developed geometry, we can call the irrigation for which the measurement taken each year. The earlier kingdom has traded with Canaan, Persia, and Syria. About this we will talk in our other videos. Also, wars were held with neighbors, mostly with Nubia and African tribes. The slavery in early kingdom was patriarchal, and the slaves were prisoners of war. Pharaohs and nobles were buried in mastabs. They were nearly the single architectural monuments of that time that stay up to our days. The religion in early kingdom was slightly different than in the latest times, however already had the main features of Egyptian mythology.
Old Kingdom, 3rd to 6th dynasties. The Old Kingdom is the beginning of that Egypt that we know, including the pyramids, mythology, colonies, etc. It's important to mention that this is the only period in time where pyramids were actually built. The first pharaoh of the 3rd dynasty was Pharaoh Djoser. To him belong 3 pyramids, but we still don't know where he was buried. By the way, pyramids are very mysterious. The mastabs were built from raw brick, no other architectural monuments made out of stones, no major architectural features, and all of a sudden the pyramids appeared. The architecture of pyramids was Imhotep. He was a multidisciplinary man who was at the same time the first priest of Ra, architecture, poet, philosopher, not the first though, first one whom we know lived in Sumer. Doctor, he wrote a medical dictionary with a real, not mysterious causes of illness and how to fix it. Engineer, scientist, first man after Pharaoh, wizard, was defied.
The idea to build pyramids became even more popular after the Imhotep's death. Here is the list of all Egyptian pyramids. 3rd dynasty. The Kaaba, Layer Pyramid, Step Pyramid of Djoser, Pyramid of Sekhmet, the Buried Pyramid. 4th dynasty. Bent Pyramid, Red Pyramid, Pyramid of Medum, the Great Pyramid of Giza, Pyramid of Khafre, Pyramid of Menkaure. 4th dynasty. Pyramid of Userkaf, Pyramid of Sahur, Pyramid of Neferkari. After that, archaeologists found around a dozen other pyramids, but they're not great at all, and the last of them was built in 13th dynasty. The secret how to build pyramids was lost in 4th, 5th dynasties.
As for international structure of Egypt, the pharaohs had the central power but still had to listen what priests and nomarchs said. Nomarchs, the rulers of nomes, territorial provinces. For making Pharaoh's reputation stronger, he was defied. And if in early Egypt Pharaoh was in a close relationship with god Horus, maybe even was his son, now he became the son of the sun god Ra and the incarnation of god Horus himself. After that, all power in the kingdom started to belong to Pharaoh, and all important state position could be occupied only by members of the Pharaoh's family. However, if Pharaoh decided to assign someone for state position, he adopted that person and gave him a title, Son of the Pharaoh. Some Egyptologists think that the Old Kingdom is a period of isolation because In Egypt of that time bronze was still unknown, and the culture had no signs of interaction and interference with neighboring countries. Nevertheless, Egypt didn't suffer from that and could feed and support itself.
Also, in the early kingdom, the Egyptians had tried to make pets of absolutely any animal which lived in the region. Again, that was possible only because the time was calm and the Egyptians could use their free time which they had in excess. However, as evidence of free time, we can mention philosophical texts as well. Egypt's wealth finds its end in 6th dynasty. We don't know the exact reason of sudden fading, but during that time there were a few military raids to Nubia. It's possible that they were the true reasons for Egypt's first fall. Because of the wars, the taxes increased, and peasants revolted. The nomarchs got a power as they now had armies and received benefits of wars. They also revolted and tried to separate the Egypt to rule themselves.